Hello friends, thank you for joining me for the first in a series of programs designed to look at our government. I plan to introduce to you the people involved in our government, how it works, and the procedures necessary for its operation. My name is Dan Armin, and I'm your host. Welcome to I Want to Know. And welcome to our town manager, Mike Paulhus. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a Connecticut resident, native, and grew up in the town of Windham, and went to school in Illinois, and then into the Peace Corps. And I'll try to give you the short version, and then from there,
Sure.
Back home, and a master's in international affairs from Ohio University, and then I started at UConn, an MPA program, and about halfway through, landed a position in the local government of town of Windham, where I started my career.
Where you grew up?
Yeah, where I grew up in 1994, and finished up my master's in public administration from UConn at night, and spent 13 years there in local government before coming to North Branford.
Connecticut was lucky to keep you.
Yeah, right.
Now that you're here, what do you like most about North Branford?
Well, you know, it's just a great community, Dan. As you know, I mean, I think the community spirit really comes alive here. You know,
Absolutely.
It's really, you know, you can feel that, and it's a caring community where everyone comes together, and see it. I'm seeing it over and over in terms of how much support there is, and so much volunteerism that you see, and I think it's just a really close knit organization, close knit community, right? And the quality of life, right, is really high and is impressive, and I think we should talk about that in the impressions program.
Yes.
That we did maybe later on in the program. But when another community comes in to talk about their first impressions, and that's what they talk about. It was just how well this community looks and feels. You know, that it's just got a great quality of life to it.
It's definitely, you know, the residents of our town make our town what it is.
Yeah, and I'm struck by that in terms of, you know, the community spirit.
People are dedicated to each other.
Absolutely,
here.
Absolutely.
Something to be very proud of.
Yes.
Definitely. So, Mike, can you, before we get into what you do as a town manager, can you describe the difference between the town manager form of government that North Branford has versus the selectman form that Windham has, where you're from, and Branford has as well, I believe?
Sure, yeah. In Windham, they have the first selectman is elected for that position, that office, and so the first selectman serves as the chief elected officer and the chief executive officer in one. And so they're responsible for the day-to-day meetings, day-to-day operations,
Right.
as well as running the meetings and presiding at the town council or board meetings. So a little bit different here in North Branford, where they have the mayor council form, you know, and they appoint a town manager. So I'm work at their pleasure and pleasure of the council, and get my directives from the council in terms of they're a body that has the power vested in them for both policy and also, as you know, for the budgeting and finances. So, and in this case, also for the sewer and being the Water Pollution Control Authority,
Right.
all wrapped in. And in that sense, it's separate, you know, so the council really deals with setting the policy, and it's for the town manager to carry that out on a day-to-day basis. And so there are a lot of things that we do on a regular basis, as you know, and this is the season now where, you know, we're getting into budgets and putting the budgets together and so forth, but sort of the day-to-day operations with all the department heads are, you know, plowing the streets and make sure the roads are safe, and that we're you know, collecting taxes and you know, collecting the garbage and making the trains run on time.
Yeah, right. People are doing what they need to do to make the town run.
Right.
Okay, so that did kind of answer what you do. You're also responsible for the employees on the town side as well, correct?
Right, the hiring and firing in terms of the personnel matters, collective bargaining. So we have 4 different units with, you know, clerical at the town hall. We have library, we have public works, and we have police. Our fire department, all volunteer, so it's not under collective bargaining. So it's my role to make sure that on a regular basis or every 3 years or so, we'll have that collective bargaining agreement that we'll have to review and negotiate. So that falls within my duties and responsibilities, and ultimately in consultation with the council, that they sign off and have to approve that. So, yeah, those are not always, doesn't happen every year, because typically it'll be a 3-year contract.
3-year cycle.
But it's part of once that contract is in place, then it's making sure that everything runs smoothly in terms of the work environment, if you will.
And plus, some contracts are yearly. They're just...
Yeah, we've done last year we did a year, and we're hoping, and typically we do a 3-year, so we're hoping to do that again.
Mm-hmm. How many people are employed on the town side?
I think we're just about 110 employees.
110 people, okay. Versus the Board of Ed side is much greater.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a separation where Board of Ed is a separate. I have no role in that.
So it's its own entity with its own budget. However, the town appropriates the budget for the Board of Education, correct?
That is correct. That is the connect in terms of the role that the council has in setting the budget, if you will, the bottom line number that is presented to approve that bottom line number. Obviously, Board of Ed has their own elected officials as well to govern their side, and but it is a relationship in which we work together and collaborate, and there are a number of projects that we do work on.
Yeah, everybody needs to know what their goals are for the upcoming year, budget-wise and directive-wise.
Yeah, and the budget's it's a tough process. It's given the climate we're in right now with the state, as you know, and the uncertainty that we went through last year without having a number and really to sort of
that was tough.
Yeah, it's tough not knowing. Yeah, and it's tough to plan and to get things done.
Expenses keep on rolling in too. So whether or not the state decides to, appropriate money to the town, we still are responsible for making sure the town operates.
Right, and for the town of North Branford, there's about $8 million in revenue from the state, give or take. And we went down this year, and we'll probably take another hit going into the next fiscal year.
Right.
But at least I think we know the number at this point, and so we're dealing with that, but it's a process, and every year we go through this process this time of year, February through March into April, and then culminating in the referendum.
Then we have the
May.
referendum, correct? Right.
Right.
So, speaking of money and kind of morphing into the infrastructure end of the discussion, the town is responsible for the infrastructure for both the town and the Board of Education property, correct? Like the schools, the roofs, parking lots, basketball courts, mowing the lawn. The town handles all of that maintenance, correct?
Well, yeah. The Board of Ed has certain rules and responsibilities in terms of their physical plants, and does rely on the public works from time to time to help them. And again, it's that collaboration, right? We're working together. We're all one town. We're all one community. But like other departments that I have control or oversight over, not control, but oversight, and they develop their budgets, they'll put in capital pieces in the larger budgets, like police, fire, public works. School side is going to do the same thing. So it's not just a operational budget in terms of paying teachers' salaries and principals and so forth, but they're looking at their infrastructure and
what their needs are going to be.
Absolutely.
Like town council had to appropriate money for the new boilers.
Right.
And you guys, the town's been involved with repairing some problems with the roofs. And you were directly involved with that.
Yeah, and that's again, I'm right in that sense. Given direction from the council, asked to get involved and to assist, then I have a reason to be at the table to work and to help, to improve and to repair. If in this case, troubleshooting, looking at
handling different contractors.
Yeah. Well, right.
Bring
You
them
just-
back in to evaluate what may be happening on
Right.
site.
Yeah, right. Evaluating and then putting together a plan to address those issues, and we're working on it. We've made some great progress, and we'll continue to make progress until we finish it, which should be coming up. We have to go through a couple of seasons here to get through into the summer, and finally, sort of if you will, a recommissioning of the mechanical side. But it's not just. It was a very complex project and a
Right.
very big project, so it's
And they're
the
complex
envelope.
systems.
Right, but if you break it down, it's sort of the envelope of the roof itself, which is a rubber membrane, and so that's one piece of it, which I think we've pretty much
You buttoned up. Yeah,
as
okay.
well, right. And now it's into the mechanical side and looking at the controllers and the pieces on the software and hardware side of it. And then that has to be sort of recalculated or recalibrated and sort of recommissioned. And we're getting there. And it's going to be, hopefully in the spring, be one of those things that we can check off the box and say, yeah, we brought it back.
Over and done with.
Over and done with, and we brought it back. But yeah, that project and the boiler project is something that, again, is a big project for the high school, which is in the works right now. A company's been selected. They're on site working to install those. There's some internal remediation that they need to do in terms of sort of moving pipes, basically.
Right.
Making the
To accommodate the new
space
system.
to accommodate the new system. So the company's on site working on that, and that should actually be, I think they delivered or should have delivered the boilers this week or next, and so that should actually be hopefully online and up and running before the end of the season. So hopefully keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, they're going to be able to do this during the school year then.
They're doing it right now.
Without interruption.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
doing it right now, yeah.
Great. So then that's really what you've been focused on lately, I guess.
Yeah, it's been the budget was really a time-consuming process because it never really got started or ended,
Right.
So
It's been ongoing.
It's been ongoing, and then the uncertainty, and now we're rolling right into another budget that we're doing with union negotiations. So it's pretty
That's
busy.
time-consuming as well.
Yeah.
What do you see your next focus being? I know the police station is going to be on deck for...
Yeah, right. That's in the works as well. That is what we call a renovation and expansion project. So we have an architect on board, Silver Petroselli, and Bill Silver is working with the council, working with the police department commission, bringing all the players together. You know it. You've walked it. It's... I want to try to be nice in terms of describing, but the building is obsolete. It may look great on the facade, right?
Don't judge a building by its facade necessarily.
So getting behind there, it's a tired building, but the councils recognize that, the commission recognizes that, and now it's in the hands of an architect to look at it and kind of explain and lay out the plans of what can be done there. And so that's what I guess we can call one of the special projects we're working on. And I think that'll be coming forward in the next couple of months.
Okay, fantastic. When it comes to budgets, if we can get into that, how important is state funding? How much does North Branford really rely on the state funding, whether it be in educational ECS grants, educational cost sharing grants?
Right.
For the board side or grants on the town side, that really, it's very important for the town that we garner those grants.
It is. And most residents may not realize that our taxes don't cover everything for the budget. It doesn't cover all of our expenses. And it's really, it was highlighted this season in going through the budget, realizing that everything's fine when the state is delivering on its promises for revenue. Right? So the biggest part of the budget is the education budget by far. And, talking about $30 million, approximately $30 million. And
$30 million of a $50 million budget?
Yeah, on its own, right. So it's really the lion's share of the town budget.
As it is in any town.
As it is in any town, correct. And so the state has a formula for what they call the ECS, which is the Educational Cost Sharing Formula and Funding Program for schools and the boards of education. And for us, it's a big number. So, like I said, it's probably 7 million or so.
Yeah.
And so our total, in terms, I think we were somewhere about 8.5 million in terms of state revenue funding. So when the state comes in and says it's going from 8.5 million down to 7 million or less, and we weren't sure from the last round.
And it could have been 5 million.
It could have been 5 million,
yeah.
right? We weren't really sure. But lucky, we've got great representation up there in Hartford, and we came out okay, as we're surviving. But it's still, we had to use fund balance and
general fund money,
decrease in our debt service,
right.
Windfall there that was able to plug the difference.
So
right?
people should know that town council was hoping to be able to take that savings in the reduced debt service
right.
and put it towards something like the police department or
yeah.
another project that we desperately need, but we were forced
right.
to again address the shortfall
right.
from the state.
Right, right, exactly. That because it wasn't a secret, right? So when I came and hired in 2013, looking at debt service and say, gee, here's the pattern. 17, 18 is the year, right?
Yeah.
You look at the debt service falling off, to the tune of
it's a breath of fresh air.
$1.5 million. Oh, yeah, it's sort of the wiggle room, but fortunate for us in the town, it was able to plug.
Right. So we are
gap.
lucky we had that to serve as a buffer.
Right. Right.
That's very true.
Yeah, and that's significant because a 1 mil increase is about $1.2 million is a mil increase.
Right.
So the state revenue has a big factor in a small town like North Branford. It can shift, the whole dynamic.
What is the most pressing issue then, as far as our upcoming budget? Do you have an idea of where the state is? Or?
Yeah, I think the most pressing issue is I would say looking at state revenue, but also the capital, right? The large capital purchases, long-term planning, and with respect to big ticket items that aren't cheap, right?
Yeah, snow plows, fire engines.
Exactly, snow plows.
Police cars even.
Right. So those are big ticket items, and you have to. But roads are, as you know, roads are
right.
big. So that's a problem. That we got to look at it. You can only go so long in terms of deferred maintenance and so sort of keeping these vehicles or roads together and getting more than a 20-year, 30-year life out of it.
Right, and the road should be on like a 20-year cycle, I believe. Right. So once you're beyond that, you're on borrowed time.
Right, and you get to a point where if you're putting in regular maintenance, you extend the life, and then when you get to a point, it's just you have to. Instead of repairing the road,
you're spending more money on the maintenance.
You're reconstructing the entire section. So it's
that we did in Northford a couple
years
ago.
Exactly, that was a major because you had to do reconstruction,
drainage.
Right? Drainage and so forth. There's a lot into it. It's very expensive, on a linear mile. It's very expensive.
One more thing about the budget. I know that town council just hired a grant writer. Can you elaborate on what the grant writer is going to be? Has the grant writer been able to achieve something for the town so
far?
No,
not at this point. But it was approved to help us go after and look at grants. Really, in this case, the grant writer is going to write the grants. I've got to look at, and staff will have to source out the opportunities for grants. And then that grant writer will look at it and give a review for us and tell if it makes sense. And then if it does, and we go forward and write that. We're only paying that person to write the grant. So if they're not engaged in writing the grant,
and they're not out there fishing for the grants.
No, that'll be for us to look for, and we get a lot of help from our Council of Governments that directs them, and the state. We look at a couple of different sources that we have to look at, and once we find one or look at one, we can have the grant writer evaluate it. And again, she's only paid when we engage her for those services.
Okay.
So it's sort of on a standby. I haven't found anything yet to give her to work on, but we have a couple of leads on a couple of different things we're going to probably have her assess and take a look at.
What can you tell me about the Route 80 bridge?
Still, as far as I know, that's going to be ongoing. I mean, there was talk within the governor's circle in terms of the Department of Transportation. I think the press had picked up on it that there was going to be a suspension of transportation projects. This one is so far along that it's going to go forward.
This is what they would call shovel ready in a way.
Shovel ready, right, ready to go. I think in design, and there's a meeting that our engineer is on top of it and will be attending, and will be able to report back to us to let us know what's going on. But that's a replacement of the bridge over there, and that's going to be a major project.
When is
and
that?
I point that way, and that means
yeah, I know, right? For everybody, it's that way.
That's that way, right?
When is that projected to start? Do we know a target date for that?
Yeah, they're gonna try and get in this season, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So in the spring?
And it might have, because they're going to try for this spring, I believe, and that's what I'm waiting for in terms of the update. And I could be wrong on that. They might have had to push that out to 2019, but I think they're ready to go, and we're waiting. That's what we're trying to find out.
As far as economic development is concerned, because the better our roads are, the easier it is to promote economic development in town. What do you think our challenges are, and versus how we're looking to market the town?
Well, there's a lot with respect to economic development, and first and foremost, right, a transportation, roads and access is important, right? So if we're on 91 or if we're on 95 or Route 1, right, it's like
the people are there.
Right, the traffic counts are there,
right?
And so the interstate commerce and all of that, it makes, the different organizations and agencies that look at these profiles will look at stuff like that. And so we're off. We're not, we don't have a piece of those interstate highways, right? So that makes it difficult, number one. But water and sewer is another issue, and just available land. So look at North Branford. We're handcuffed by the fact that almost 1/3 of the land mass is controlled by the Regional Water Authority.
Right.
Right. So we can't touch that. So it makes just the corridor issue something we have to work on, and
so we're very limited as far as what we can actually offer.
Right.
A developer, a potential developer, other than what may be privately offered for sale.
Right. Yeah. It just makes it a little bit difficult, a little bit harder to do, because we're not going to have we're not going to be like the other towns around us. And,
right.
And so we have to kind of play to the strengths and say, okay, what is about this community, in terms of agricultural farming community, with developments in terms of vineyards and sports draws in terms of the sportsplex,
right.
And the ice rink and the pavilion. So there is a sort of synergy there around sports and leisure, right? So and farming or agritourism and so forth. So I think with the help of different organizations, we can start to build upon that, and really just do the best we can with working to retain the great businesses that we have here now, and helping them grow and expand if we can, but work on retention first, because we're really not going to line up with a Branford or a North Haven or West Haven, East Haven, and trying to locate a big box realty,
right?
Kind of say
But we have our own identity, which a lot
Yes.
of businesses should be looking at.
Right. Well, it's a different pace, and and a different smaller scale.
Sure.
Mom and pop businesses, and some mixture of manufacturing that people may or may not be aware of that we have in this town, that are just quietly doing a great business and doing the best that they can, and not always getting in the spotlight.
Right. One good way that we do promote our town is with the Potato and Corn Festival, as we all know.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, again, that's when I think of when the the community spirit of this town, and gosh, it's a lot of fun, and
one good way that the town has to finally see your neighbor, say hello. I haven't seen you in a year since the last Potato and Corn Festival. How have you been?
Yeah, it's I think an event that people look forward to, and you're really when you jump and get behind in working behind the scenes, or working on the front lines, maybe serving, the amount of people you meet and talk to, and it's a lot of fun. But it just, again, it just kind of showcases that community spirit. And,
And it's
just
such a positive
and
vibe.
just a very positive, very wholesome type of, this is, a slice of Americana right here,
Right, and it's such a, it's just a positive event, which is a pleasure to be a part of, I have to say. I love it. Can you briefly, we have a couple minutes left, can you explain to me the First Impression program that economic development has, in the town has started?
Sure, that's a program through Yukon that the Economic Development Commission and the town planner Carrie Duquesne had helped bring together, and it allows two towns to commit to a sort of a participation in this program where their first view or first impression of of the town. So
do we like adopt each other?
Well, yeah, it's sort of kind of like that. It's just short of a adoption. We actually agreed to send a delegation to each town. So we had a delegation that we went to Coventry, and we were matched up with Coventry, Connecticut, and then Coventry sent a delegation here to get their first impressions of North Branford.
And we picked these towns because of our demographic matchup?
Yes, I think you submit to be to submit an application as a participant.
I see.
And then the Yukon and the programmers look at it and say, okay, here are some options, and they actually do the selection, if you will.
Okay.
And so they matched us with Coventry, and I think it's a very insightful program that gives you really firsthand data, from people that are on site. And again, there's a lot of good comments that the Commission, Economic Development Commission, and the Town Council can use to say, yeah, this is great feedback to reaffirm and to also to understand where we should be. What we should be working on and things that we should look at.
And their successes versus our successes, et cetera. And we don't want to repeat each other's mistakes, too.
Right, yeah.
And one more question I've been very curious about is our 10-year plan of conservation and development. Can you explain, now, I would suspect a lot of the people don't know anything about this, but it's very fascinating. Can you explain to the people what?
Yeah, I wish I could give it justice. But right. in a nutshell, and I think as a future guest, you might want to have the town planner.
That's a great idea.
To have her on the show. She's great, and she's embarking on doing that because it's a state mandate, right? So we're up for this process, if you will. So every 10 years, the town has to do a new comprehensive plan of conservation and development. And it looks at a very exhaustive type of research and writing that goes into it, because you imagine the state is looking for information, and it's not only to help the town but help the state in terms of who's growing, who's not, well, where are they growing, how are they growing, are there transportation issues, housing issues, what's their zoning look like, and so it's a comprehensive look, and it helps a lot with economic development, but it takes a long time to pull it together, and I think we'll have to have Carrie in to give it full justice in terms of explanation, in terms of the whole process and how that works. But it takes a long time, and it'd probably take her probably a year to 18 months to complete, and that's why we're
really thorough,
putting it in
really in depth.
Yeah, putting it in the budget right now through this year's budget request. Because we'll need assistance to go out to a consultant to help write. Most of it, as much as she can do in-house will be done, and then help with a consultant.
Okay, well, fantastic. Mike, I really appreciate you
it's a pleasure
joining
to be here.
me on this maiden voyage of ours. So I would like to thank you all for joining me today. I want to thank the town manager. I would like this show to be as interactive as possible. So with any questions you may have about our town government, please email me at danarminnb@gmail.com. And your observations and questions about this program are welcome as well. And we'll address them on future episodes. Please help sustain Tutucket TV, which serves your town via video. And please support the Tutucket Times, which serves your town in print. Thank you very much for watching.